So, Max, Scott and I are fans of this film.
Mm-hmm.
I habitually teased you about not having seen this film by quoting it to you.
Tease someone about.
I would quote it to you so that way you wouldn't understand what I was talking about.
A lot of energy into that right there.
Right.
Here comes the theme!
Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, a podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
And I'm Scott. Today we're talking Catch Me If You Can, rated 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. We're joined by a returning guest, the one, the only, Albert Dubreuil.
Hey, guys. This is how my voice sounds. It's not going to get any better. This is it for real. The whole way through. This is what it is.
It might get worse, though.
It might get worse before it gets better, but it's not going to.
It always gets worse.
Yeah.
We've been building you up. We've been hyping you to our fans.
Really? Yeah.
This week's episode was just us preparing everyone for you.
Okay.
Today.
We had a short delay on this. We promised it like 2 weeks back, but, we're dropping it now.
Yeah, and everyone's been waiting with bated breath so we can let them breathe and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted you on because back when we had you on in The Shining, which, what was that, like February maybe?
Yeah, late February was that episode.
Maybe.
It was a good snow time episode.
Yeah, that is a good snowy time episode. But you had even mentioned then, I think you had seen our schedule. Maybe that was when we were just planning the 90s out, so all the movies were kind of fresh in our mind.
Yeah. Also,
you had mentioned you wanted a guest on Catch Me If You Can.
He had found out when we used to work together that I had not seen Catch Me If You Can at the time, and then it became a daily discussion for him with everyone else that passed our cubicle.
And now it's a daily discussion for everyone on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You said our cubicle like we shared a cubicle, which was untrue.
Well, we were in touching cubicles. How would you say that?
Sure.
Adjoining cubes.
Adjoining.
I would call you guys cube mates.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. I guess we're pod mates, but now we're really pod mates. So,
what a bringer back. Well, Max, have you been watching anything interesting?
Kinda, but not really.
All right, Albert, how about you?
Well, let me dip in.
Okay.
I'll start it off with since you tried to cut me off. We just rewatched a little bit of The Office recently.
We have also rewatched probably seasons 1 and 2 so far of The Office.
It's a good feel-good show. So, I've had some family issues happen lately, and it's just I'm a fan of The Office, but I'm not a super fan. And most of my friends are super fans, which I'm cool with, but it's just constant Office references and stuff like that. So I know all of them, and I like them, but I'm not one of those people who, as soon as I finish my full season rewatch, full series, again. I start again. Yeah. So every now and then, every couple of years, I'll dip into a couple episodes, and we were saying it'd be really nice if Netflix had a random button for The Office. It'd be Friends, The Office, maybe Parks and Rec. Like a couple of those shows could use a randomized button. And I agree. Like, it would be good because we were just scrolling through finding random ones to put on.
Do any of the streamings do that? I feel like not. Like, does Hulu have The Simpsons? Because that'd be a good one to have a random episode button.
I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of older shows, so they could do that. Yeah. For sure. Guys, if you're listening, which we know you do.
Yeah, Hulu execs have been in for a while.
Go ahead and just add random there.
I think that's a good show because, you can just kind of have it on the background, and the 4 minutes you pay attention to, you'll get a couple chuckles out of it, and then you're back out.
This would be our second time through The Office. I remember watching all the episodes live when they first aired and never going back. I mean, love the show, but just never went back to it. So this is our second time per episode, which is... a lot of it feels very fresh.
Yeah, because
it's been a long time.
No, it's not been 10 years.
It's getting close.
I mean, since
season 2006 or something?
Since season 1 and 2, it's been a while.
Since it premiered for sure.
It's a great Amy Adams segue for Catch Me If You Can also.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yep.
But we're not going there yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
She was the bad girl.
Yeah, but I'm going to circle it back to Amy Adams anytime I can. So
good luck.
True that.
Let's see if you can circle it back from what I've been watching.
Okay, go ahead.
I watched season 2 of American Vandal, which is a Netflix original. I know Max doesn't watch it. Did you watch the first season?
No.
It's like it's a mockumentary of true crime podcasts and stuff. It's like these kids. The first season is a prankster draws dicks on all the teachers' cars. So it's like who drew the dicks like the whole time. And the second season is they call it the brownout. And it's like somebody put laxatives in the lemonade and they're trying to figure out who did all these crimes. And so the first season was a really good play on those true crime. Like Serial is a perfect example because Serial was amazing, but it also was very easy to joke on. Like, I remember SNL had a really good serial skit, just the way she talks and things like this. And they make plays and stuff on that, and it's really funny. The second season was just as good as the first. I watched it all in like 2 nights.
Is anybody in it? You said it's a mockumentary, but
yeah,
have, like the same players in every one of them. Or?
So each season has the characters that are making the documentary. They're Peter Maldonado and someone else. They're not like famous actors, but they're just the only recurring characters. And then they were at different schools in each season. And there haven't been like major actors in either one of them. And the first season had like apparently a major YouTube star in it, but I didn't even know who it was. I couldn't tell you what character it was. So that shows how far into the YouTube game I get. But it's just a really fun, like, harmless show. I remember they spent like 20 minutes on like a 3D diagram like you'll see in a crime documentary on TV where they show like a recreation of the scene of someone like getting a hand job at camp. And like, how could she have seen the hand job if she was at this dock? And then they like recreated the scene, like, or was she really? And they turned the camera over here, and I don't know, it's just really funny. So like after seeing what was the one with in Wisconsin?
Making a Murderer
and Serial, and so this is like a perfect foil for those.
That's cool.
And the second season was good too. So Amy Adams, though, you gotta.
Well, the hand job in the camp, I was going to say that's just like the movie Doubt with Amy Adams.
Nice,
right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Before we dip too far into that one, I did watch something else at random. I've been digitizing some old family tapes, and apparently my parents had recorded all of the figure skating from the 1994 Olympics, and it's just wedged between our family videos. So I got to see Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan at their peak.
Was that the Atlanta?
No, this is
pre-Atlanta.
It's a European one.
Lilyhammer, yeah, cool.
So,
of course.
Yeah, this goes back to last time we talked about The Cutting Edge.
Yes.
And I did plenty of research to write that article about The Cutting Edge.
You did on thecriticalbreakdown.com.
Yes. And so you got some recorded footage.
Yeah. I recorded it on my computer. I should have just pulled it up, but it's pretty good quality for VHS. We didn't record much on those tapes. They were high quality, so I got them in there. And
when you digitize a VHS tape like that, and I know you spent a lot of time doing that lately with your family videos and stuff, do you lose quality in that process? I don't understand.
You can. You'll capture the quality as well as you can. Basically, it's like you're scanning a picture almost, where the original picture will always look good, and your capture will only be as good as that capture is. So if it's an old faded image, you can only capture it as good as that is.
It's not going to restore.
Yeah, and VHS tapes only have about a 25-year life of preservation. After that, they start to degrade. So anything beyond 25 years ago has been losing quality because the magnet strip kind of like runs out. So for example, we have some tapes from 1979 that are in black and white VHS, which was like very small time that they had that format, and it has like light trails in it where you can see the movement moving around, and it's kind of grainy and stuff and not super contrasty. And yeah, 1994, the footage captures pretty good, basically.
That's cool.
So
you always see these like digital restorations of movies and stuff coming out in theaters, and I don't understand that process.
There's a lot to it, way too much for this show. But
like, for example, I think last year, I think it was maybe the 40-year anniversary of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they did a re-release in theaters for it. When did that come out? 73 or something? Or am I too early on it? I don't know, but they did. It was some anniversary, so they brought it back into the theaters, and then they released like restored Blu-rays of it. And so when you talk about this process, I don't know if it's the same thing as that process, and it's always confusing.
Is Close Encounters still winning the poll for the next film you're going to be watching?
That's a really good question.
To make it like a Spielberg fest between Catch Me If You Can and Close Encounters?
It's actually the official winner now.
The official winner.
Yeah. The Fugitive gave it some chase there.
Was that the second place? Was The Fugitive?
Yeah, I got close.
I put my... I tried to get my loyal brake clowns behind Argo.
Yeah,
but nothing
which
happened.
was my choice.
Yeah, it was
which
one of the ones
I enjoyed.
What is the
my selection
word for that?
You voted in the poll.
My nominee.
Nominee. You nominated it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I had the word vote down, but
right.
Well, so next week it's Close Encounters then.
Yeah.
That's cool. Funny enough, of the 4 movies, this is the only one I don't own. So now I get to go buy another Blu-ray.
I used to have that movie on VHS, but I no longer do.
Well, Max could have got it to us to DVD, but
watching its original VHS.
No, but they did release last year like a fresh version of the Blu-ray of Close Encounters. So that's cool. And I know you've talked a number of times because not only will this be our like 4th or 5th Spielberg movie, but this will be our 4th or 5th Alien invasion movie between Signs, Arrival, Contact.
Alien Contact film. Yeah.
Invasion doesn't always want to be bad.
They prefer Alien Contact films, though.
Yeah, that's the PC term.
Yeah. Stupid SJWs.
Well, that's cool that we'll be watching Close Encounters.
Yeah, double Spielberg.
Before we get into the really meaty parts of the episode, I do want to talk about one more thing, and I'm sure Max has been dreading it, but...
Dreading it? I'm excited to hear this.
Well, Albert is another Survivor fan.
That.
Yeah. See, I think we were on different pages there.
I thought we were ready for the 90.
When we were first getting ready to have Albert on, I was praying that it would be after the Wednesday when Survivor premiered, which was 2 weeks ago, and then luckily luckily is probably not the right word, but the schedules didn't come together, and now there's been 2 episodes of Survivor, David vs. Goliath. So Albert, thoughts so far? You're only 1 episode in.
I've got thoughts overall, but I have a vested interest in this season because at work I run a Survivor pool.
Yeah,
and it's typically just people that are at work. Max used to work with me, and I believe one season after you left, we included you in the league where you get to pick. The way we do it, just real quick, if it's 20 survivors, everybody, you get 10 people in, you pick one guy, one girl, and it's a $10 buy-in, and it's $100 for the winner. So the year that the season that Max won, he picked the 2 cops.
Yep, Sir Tony, I actually made those picks for him.
I'm going to say the 2 cops, right?
You made suggestions.
I ranked all of the players and game changers for you, and that's how you picked
those weren't your top ones.
No, but you picked the top available. Anyways,
I selected.
So I just want some credit here.
I don't know. Were you in the following season after that? I think you were, right? Because then I won it.
That was Heroes versus Hustlers Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers.
And I
remember you had Alan Ball
versus Predator.
And I don't remember the female contestant you had, but
was everyone mad that you won that one?
Well, I'm always cautious in running the league that people are going to call me out for doing something shady. So I let other people. I let other people pick the lottery order, of how we're going to do the picks. Yeah. And if my name comes up first, I don't allow it. Like somebody else pick, So I'm doing all that in front of everybody. And nobody's ever called me out, but I'm acting like I'm cautious about it. And my wife and I picked the people for that season because you don't know anything about them. And I only have a few rules. Yeah. My rules when it's new players are don't pick the youngest person, don't pick the oldest person. Don't pick the prettiest girl, and don't pick the jackedest guy.
I think those are pretty fair rules.
Right, so that's what I go for. And
pick the least noticeable
pick
person.
Pick the most average person. Pick the last person you noticed in the picture.
Right. And so whoever that left, we picked a girl who had the same last name as my son's first name, and a guy who was from a town that we had heard of. So that's those were our parameters. Yeah. And so I ended up winning, and then I was glad because I didn't have to pay everybody back their money because I'd already spent it.
That's the only reason you wanted to win.
Right. And then promptly didn't do the following season. So we didn't have one for Ghost Island. We did one for this season. We only did people that are at work, so Max was not involved. And it's going really well, although my guy lost in the first episode.
Yeah, you had Pat, was it Pat Cusack? Was that his last name?
Pat Cusack was his name, and I don't know why I picked him, but I picked him, and he went out in the weirdest way possible.
Yeah, in fairness to you, he didn't get voted out, so it wasn't of his own volition. He was one of the people they were talking about possibly voting out, but then after the David's tribe lost the first immunity challenge, not even in the game, separate from the game when they were being boated back to their camp, there was a crazy wave that hit the boat, and he was tossed from the boat and slammed his back into the side and was medically evacuated right then.
I mean, the weird thing being that it threw the show out of whack because what happens is when they're going to one of the either tribal council or one of the challenges, they all walk down the beach, and then it shows them arriving from behind the trees. But what really happens is they get on a boat and go all the way around the island, and you don't see that. So
because they're not always on one or two beaches. It's the challenges are scattered throughout Fiji.
Right. So Yeah, he got hurt when the cameras weren't on. Yeah. So it was just like you come back from commercial and my guy in the first episode is on the ground, twitching, like on a stretcher. And he's doing like very definite like victim things. Like you're like, not like this.
Yeah, like don't pull me from the game,
he's
Jeff.
Crying. Yeah. And he was okay. He can still walk and everything. He just hurt his back.
Now he's fine. Yeah, but that I do think that served the episode fairly well in the sense that it was the premiere and all 20 players got a confessional. They did a really good job of showing everyone. And even in the second episode, which I know you haven't seen yet, they were able to show everybody again. But one of your rules did play out. I'll just say that. I know you haven't watched the second episode yet, but
I know what happened because I had to report to the rest of the league who was down one player.
Gotcha.
So
the youngest female ever to play the game, actually.
Really?
Yeah, she got the boot.
Yeah.
So, that's Survivor, but...
Yeah. Well, I feel like for that, I mean, maybe we're going on too long with Survivor, but I feel like for that, the 19-year-old, it's cute to have them on, whether it's a guy or a girl, and they may be doing well on the challenge and stuff, but they're never going to win. The jury's never going to feel that 19-year-old who hasn't essentially worked a day in their life
has earned it.
Has earned getting $1 million. They're not going to. They're just not going to hand it to that person. So it's nice to have that person on the show, but they're never going to stick it out.
It's the same reason why like a former professional athlete, when they're on the show, will hide what they did. Like my favorite former professional athlete was Jeff Kent in Survivor Philippines, who was an MVP winning MLB baseball player. Yep. But he just said he was like a motorcycle salesman the whole time.
Right.
And he gave, I just rewatched the season with a friend who's getting into Survivor. He gave the best speech every time. Whenever someone gets voted out, they get like a 10-second speech, and he gave the best one of all time. He went on and he said he was I don't want to misquote it, but he was pissed off. He was like, this is only $1 million and I've made over $40 million in my career and I still wanted to win the damn thing, so it pisses me off. And it's not even $1 million after Obama gets his hands on it. It's like my favorite moment. I want Jeff Kent to be on every season of Survivor. But last season, Ghost Island had Michael Yerger, who is the youngest male to ever play, the youngest player ever, and he just lied about his age, and he was like a model. He was buff, like he was like 23 or 20. He said he was 23 or 24, but he was actually 18. Yeah, but nobody called him on that. So that's like the only way someone that young could ever make it to the end.
It's like the Civil War.
Yeah, exactly.
Lie about your age to get onto Survivor.
Yeah. But so I just needed a little in-depth Survivor talk there.
That's fine. That's good. Gave me time to take photos, you guys.
Yeah, so. You might have heard the snaps in the background, but before we get to Catch Me If You Can, there's only one more thing to do.
So next week, we're going to be what? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's the 90.
It's the 90.
We've been pitching back and forth. Albert will tell you how this works.
Okay.
We've been pitching ideas back and forth to each other. What we're going to do next. 100 is right around the corner.
Yeah.
We're about to be, after next week's episode, we're on 97.
Yeah.
That's the home stretch. So we got to figure out what we're doing next so we can keep bringing people episodes.
So how are you trying to figure that out?
Well, each week we just make our pitch to each other, and then we're accepting listener comments. So far, I think both of our ideas have been so good that nobody has really come in and commented. But
who's got a pitch this week?
I've got the pitch this week.
Yeah.
Okay. The mic is mine. The floor is mine. So I get 90 uninterrupted seconds to fill.
Okay.
And to explain my idea. So now I have an extra audience member. I'm going to say this is going to be a good thing for me.
Yeah. Can we ask questions at the end?
At the end of the 90,
you want to tease out some of the inconsistencies, maybe, but also bolster what's good about it. So yeah, you asked me a lot about mine, so you can't excuse me at all.
No. That's what we need to make sure the idea is bulletproof. So Max, tell me when my time has started.
All right,
you have 8 seconds left.
Starting now.
Okay, gentlemen, let me pose you a question. What's the most important aspect of American life? No, I don't need your answers. I was hypothetical. It's just the everyday man. The everyday man makes America great. Whoever they voted for, whatever job they do, the everyday man is what builds this country. The train you get on to go to work, the Subway sandwich you have at lunch, the DMV employee, they're all Toms, Dicks, Henriettas, Janes, and they're all Fifes. That's why I propose our next podcast is This American Fife. Max and I each week will open up the Mecklenburg County Yellow Pages and dial up everybody named Fife until we get a bite. We're throwing our rod out into the Fife Ocean, and we're gonna catch that every man. And every week we're just gonna talk about life. Let's have a rap. Let's see what life is like for the Fife on the farm. How's agriculture doing? How's that family farm doing in this industrial farm complex? Then we're going to go out there and we're going to say, oh, hey, my name's Andre Fife and I play in the NFL. He picked up the phone. We're going to talk to an NFL player. That's the everyday American too. Because that's the beauty of America. You can be anything you want to be.
Even if you're named Fife.
Excuse me, this is my time. Especially if you're named Fife. So Max and I, every week, I got the Mecklenburg County Yellow Pages just the other day.
So I interrupted.
Yeah, you totally took me out of my phone.
I'll give you 3. I'll give you 2.5 extra seconds and go.
Fife, man.
There you go.
Yeah. And I think I said everything I need to.
My first question is,
please.
Do you think our interviewees would be heavily skewed towards being very old?
Can I ask why you would say that?
Because I don't know anyone who's probably in a phone book who I hang out with. So I'm just thinking.
Okay, so maybe this is my knowledge of phone books not working, but aren't we all in the phone book?
Not if you're on a cell phone.
Right. I do not
so
have
this
a
would be largely landlines, right? Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, do you think that'll make it more interesting to have more of an elderly crowd of Fifes?
So I'm glad you brought this up because my pitch was a little long. I had a lot of editorializing, but the second half of the pitch was going to be about that. It's going to start with the old Fifes. And then we're going to get to the new regime of Fifes. We're going to search the phone. We're going to search the name on Facebook. And we're going to do Facebook messages with them and have the computer transcribe the voice. Unless the guy wants to get on a Skype call with us. Or you know what? Maybe there's a lady Fife out there.
Probably some lady Fifes.
Yeah. Albert, questions?
I'm soaking this up. I mean,
this is a good idea. And I know it sounds like it's just a play on This American Life.
Yeah, it's definitely not. That's all that it is. But
can we address the elephant in the room?
That's not a nice way to talk about Albert.
We're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
This is Andy Griffith country.
Barney Fife.
Barney Fife.
He's the white whale.
The character?
No, he's the one you want to rope in. He's the Fife you're chasing.
Yeah. He was very much an everyman.
Yeah. He was the most relatable person on that show. Andy Griffith, let's
perfect.
be real,
He's
a little
Superman.
and a little judgy. And Opie? No kid can be Opie, the show is really about Barney Fife and Aunt Bee. And I think that's a good place to leave This American Fife. So listeners, you have Farm to Table Toast, Take It to the Limit, and This American Fife.
I just don't know what is Take It to the Limit again. Just really quick, 8 seconds.
Max, give him the 8.
I want you to try and describe it.
The initial idea was around us chasing Guinness Book of World Records, but then it just became thrill-seeking in general.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're taking it to the limit.
We're taking it to the limit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like Point Break with 2 out-of-shape guys.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I love Point Break. It's so good.
So out of those 3, you want to think about it, and then we'll do our power rankings eventually.
Yeah. We'll have we call it our Piper, our podcast idea power rankings.
Okay.
Right now, I think Farm to Table Toast is number 1.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know how you talk about it, though.
Yeah, I think Take It to the Limit might be the winner.
I think
so
you do the idea, and then you find out how to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to say Point Break and Catch Me If You Can are similar to me in that they're both action movies that aren't about gratuitous violence.
Is Catch Me If You Can an action film?
I would personally consider it one because there's like constant momentum to the chase.
Right. Yeah, it's like a Man on the Run kind of film. It's considered part of Spielberg's Man on the Run trilogy, which is AI, Catch Me If You Can, and the third one, Minority Report.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily an action film, but it's the chase that keeps
chase
it moving
for sure. Yeah.
I
These
consider it like
are
a
so
subgenre.
malleable.
Yeah, I mean they're just however you put the hat on it at that time. But Max, what is the plot synopsis for Catch Me If You Can for those who don't know?
Should we just outsource this to Albert since he's the Catch Me If You Can master?
I like the official way. Go ahead.
Okay, just double checking. A seasoned FBI agent pursues Frank Abagnale Jr., who, before his 19th birthday, successfully forged millions of dollars worth of checks while posing as a Pan Am pilot, a doctor, and a legal prosecutor.
It's really only the tip of the iceberg with what he did.
Yeah. It's like a summary of what he did, but the movie's more like emotionally driven than just showing his actions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right.
But even his actions beyond just those are like the 3 big hats he wore. But the biggest racket he did was when he just went around printing phony checks in Europe, I think.
Right.
As far as like financial damage.
Yeah, they just weren't. I mean, so we could separate. We've got like what the actual story is.
Yeah.
It's based on the book that came out in 1980, I think, and separate that from the movie. There's questions about how much he actually forged and what he got away with. I mean, he definitely lived that kind of a life.
Yeah.
The number of miles that he deadheaded as a Pan Am pilot is into question. But Frank Abagnale Jr. says that everybody was so embarrassed by a teenager just getting away with this stuff that banks and airlines, they don't want to admit to what he actually got away with.
Take the loss.
Right. The background, I don't remember if this happens at the beginning of the movie or not, if they make it clear, but his father owned a stationery store.
They don't, it's not on the nose, but it's actually one of my favorite details that I didn't notice the first time I saw the movie. But yeah, his family had a stationery store, and his father was definitely caught up in some kind of financial issues. They talk about it throughout the IRS. They're doing the tax liens, and they want to get you when you're down already and stuff like that. But that's my favorite little detail. They don't really touch on it other than they show, I think, Leo walking into the store at one point or walking out of it.
Right.
But that's how he's so good at doing these forgeries and removing the stickers from the plane to put on his check, and it's just really cool.
And so the division there is in the book, and what is definitely true is that he drew money down off of his father's checking account was when he first ran away from home.
Okay.
And his father had to pay back like $3,500, something like that. Once he ran away from home, he never went back. He never saw his father again.
So not even those meetings, like the Christmas meeting and stuff? Interesting.
Right. But the layer that Spielberg adds, which is a nice touch, and it makes it more of a film, makes the story into more of a film, is him having to try to impress his father, going back and showing that he's a Pan Am pilot and all these kind of things. And the way that it hit me is as a child of divorce, it really, my voice cracked there as if like I'm starting to break up just on the word divorce. But as a child of divorce, like it really is like you get to choose between mom and dad. Like I'd rather just run away and do whatever I can, and that's Spielberg has it a lot in his movies. I want to say a lot of single parents and a lot of broken homes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, he definitely does.
Yeah, so two off the top of my head would be E.T.
was
and
the
then
one
War of the Worlds that has it pretty deep in there. So just the first two I thought of at random. So yeah, it's a good point.
Right. Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mom's gone.
I haven't actually seen Last Crusade, but all you hear about Sean Connery.
I don't think Jaws had a mom. I'd have to go back and check that one.
But I mean, he had a mom,
right? But
an absent mother.
Yeah, she might have left. So so that he does that really well in this movie, and so it all kind of comes together. You
just don't see his mom for like 2/3 of the movie,
right?
He talks about her though, like so. Even though they were
a Jaws joke,
even though the meetings with his dad were fictionalized for the movie, or at least embellished, whatever. Every time he saw his dad, he was like, you can quit that job, go get in this car I bought you and just drive it up, pick mom up, take her out to dinner. But like his parents weren't together anymore.
Right. She
married, what was the guy's name? Jack, who was like one of the father, played by Christopher Walken. We haven't mentioned the cast much yet, but he was in the Rotary Club, and James Brolin plays Jack Barnes, who's like the president of the Rotary Club, and she's sleeping with him, and then she ended up having a family with him, and I guess at the end it looked like they were living a happy life. So
I think what I picked up on with this viewing, because I've seen it a lot. If it's on TNT, I'll watch it.
It's one of those movies that's on TNT.
And for her, because she was from France, it's kind of like she just wants that American dream. She wants an American lifestyle. So once it looked like that wasn't happening with Frank Sr., and they had to move into that crummy apartment, and he was, losing the job and had to sell the car. Like, no matter how Frank Sr. pitched it, which I really liked, like, we got a really good deal, like, all that kind of stuff. She just hooked up with Brolin and was like, okay, now I got that house back, which was also, do you know what movie that house was used in? Did anybody recognize it?
Castaway.
Father of the Bride.
Okay.
Father of the Bride 2 also. But so she just wants that American lifestyle, and she doesn't even care. It seems that her son is gone.
That's definitely part of it, because they talk about that a lot at the start when they're establishing the parents' relationship. How he was a soldier, she was in France, and he brought her home.
Now that you've seen this film, what do you think?
Well, I think I still won't pick up on all those quotes that I missed. So I think that's just time gone, time lost. But no, it's good. I mean, it's a good Spielberg movie. It's well made. It's well acted. Very fun to watch. It's long, but it doesn't really feel long for most of it because he's jumping around. Like most movies where the final act kind of slows down, it did feel a little bit slower towards the end, but it was also wrapping up like a very long like thread basically.
An odyssey.
Yeah. So I mean, that's coming back from, like jumping around the world and pulling off schemes. You have to kind of slow it down to show like the moral turnaround and stuff like that.
And it suits the kind of themes of the movie where, especially the very end discussions that Tom Hanks plays Carl Hanratty, the like FBI lead detective in this case. He's telling him, he's like, if you get on this plane, we're not going to chase you. Like, but you're always going to look over your shoulder and stuff. And the conflict he's having is about not being on the run anymore. That's the conflict that Abagnale's
also
having.
like weighing the adventure from before versus feeling trapped, basically. Yeah. And they very much established that he feels trapped in that final section, so it makes sense to make it like feel slower.
Yeah,
but no, I mean for that being a consideration, like I thought, it was really good. Yeah. My only thing was a bunch of people always mention Amy Adams in this movie to me because I think that was a lot of people's first exposure to Amy Adams.
It was one of her first feature film roles,
and she's super cute in it. But like for me, since I know her from so many bigger, more important movies, I was just like, well, not more important, but more important roles in movies. I was just like, okay, I mean, that was Amy Adams. But like I said, it was just random people would say that to me, like, hey. Not random people, but people would randomly say it to me.
People on the street,
people on the streets are like, "Hey, Adams."
Well, that brings up like the casting in this because there's a stretch. I mean, this is 2002. This film, and there's a stretch where a lot of like leading ladies who like hit it big soon after and continued it show up. So you have Ellen Pompeo shows up as the stewardess. This is by far the best date I've ever had. That's a great scene. And
because he's a 16-year-old.
Because he's a 16-year-old, right? So and she just thinks it's funny. So she's on Grey's Anatomy. They're on season 410 right now.
She was someone that Max and I both recognized but didn't put together who it
she's
was.
On McDreamy, isn't she?
Yeah, and then we looked it up. And she's the lead in Grey's Anatomy.
Right. And so I think at that point she'd only been on Old School.
I was going to say
she was in she was in the movie Old School, but that wouldn't have been so much of a role. I bet that it hadn't even come out yet when she filmed her. One day on.
They probably came out around the same time.
So then the next scene or so, Elizabeth Banks shows up working in a bank, which is just a little on the nose.
But did we decide this was pre-Spider-Man though? She played Betty Brant in Spider-Man.
Was it? Was
2002?
Was it Spider-Man 2001? Because I remember there was a big deal about them having to take the two towers out of.
But that was after, so it'd be at least after 2001. So let's look that up.
But either way, around the same time, and she played a very minor character in Spider-Man.
She may have been in Wet Hot American Summer prior.
Yeah, she would have been in that, but. Most people wouldn't have seen that.
And she plays like a ditzy bank teller who he cons into showing him how the Micker check printer works and everything.
Right. And then that brings in Amy Adams, who has more of a larger role. Those two are more like cameos. Well, not cameos because they're just one-off spots.
Bit parts.
But then Jennifer Garner makes a great, like a definite presence there, where she had been on Alias at that time. But so she has a great scene. That's the even better. Those are the two word catchphrases I'll drop whenever I talk about this movie is I concur and even better.
I want to start working why do the Yankees always win the pennant into conversations, but nobody would care or get it, so
no.
But it's because
I would just come back with like when the Angels won the pennant.
Yeah, reference. that's what I'd get. That's the closest thing I'd get to a response. So, but no, you're correct in that kind of on the margins of the movie because the movie is essentially Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, and everything else is pretty secondary to the two of them.
Right.
And then Christopher Walken plays another major character, but everything else is kind of just along that journey.
Yeah.
And along those margins, you do have a lot of A-list females now, because I mean Elizabeth Banks gets her own movies now. Jennifer Garner not so much anymore, but that's more of a choice. Though actually she's in the feature-length film Peppermint. I don't know how it did, but
I mean, she's still a household name though.
Yeah, I mean people know Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
And then Amy Adams, obviously.
And Jennifer Garner is literally in a scene in this movie, so like. That's kind of funny because it does stick out in the film, like I'm sure it did at the time too.
And it probably sticks out more because of who she is.
Yeah,
like if that was somebody that never went on to do anything, that scene might not stick out as much.
It sticks out more than the Hanks Boston accent, right? And then that's a little forced, wouldn't you say? Like he
was definitely acting.
Yeah, it's tough.
You can tell because when he said potato, he said it a funny way.
How did he say it?
Like potato.
That's the correct one. How dare you? My favorite scene of the movie is the first time Hanks and DiCaprio meet. You're only introduced to Hanks in one scene where he's explaining what check fraud is to all the FBI people, and they're not taking it seriously. Like, I just give my wife the checkbook, and everyone laughs and like takes another puff of a cigarette, and Tom Hanks rolls his eyes, and no one knows how to work the presentation. Yeah. So then they finally catch up to DiCaprio, and he's staying in like a long-term motel was kind of the vibe I got, or maybe an apartment. And Hanks breaks into his room, and you hear the flushing the toilet, the running water, and DiCaprio's in there, and Hanks is seeing the check printing machine, all this stuff. They also make a point of showing like the bottles with the labels scratched off and all this stuff in the scene too. And DiCaprio comes out of the bathroom, and he's on immediately. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Secret Service. Oh, you're FBI. You thought you were the only ones on this?" And they just have this like chemistry right from that moment that just sets the tone for the two of them in the movie where. DiCaprio definitely gets the best of Hanks, and he pretty much does at every turn. Just life caught up to to Frank Abagnale. Yeah. But just the interactions he's having is like, you thought the FBI was the only one on this? And then he yells down to the window. He's like, there he is. He's getting a LAPD cruiser. And they showed a blind guy that Hanks had passed on the hallway getting into his car. And DiCaprio just yells down. He's like, make sure you book that guy and get the other coppers down here. Yeah. And then you can hear the guy right before he closes the window, the guy who was walking, the blind guy, go. Then you can hear him go, huh? Yeah. And then it goes when there was nothing. And the way DiCaprio just gives him his wallet. And he's like, you can hold on to it. And he takes the check printer and runs. Oh, I love it.
Right.
Their chemistry is so much.
It's a super tense scene too. Yeah.
But it always, and what I like about the movie so much is it always has a lighthearted nature to it. Yeah. It's because the stakes aren't like world ending. Yeah. Like he definitely committed very heinous crimes of laundering and fraud. But
the biggest kind of mid-movie tension scene is when he gets, and I'm forgetting her character's name, Amy Adams, to meet him at the airport.
Brenda,
when he just escapes, from the house and all that, and he's ready for. He still has feelings for her, basically.
He wants to run away with her.
Yeah, and so he's waiting at the airport, and you start to see that everyone's stationed there, and so that was like super tense. But then the way he gets out of it is so freaking hilarious and just like magical, basically. So
yeah, what he does is at this point he's kind of abandoned the Pan Am scheme. Yeah. Then he became a doctor for a little while in Atlanta, and then he became a lawyer, which all of that's amazing too. I'm not going to gloss over it, but he gets the Pan Am uniform back on, and he goes to a college of some sort, I assumed, and he gets all the college students who they want to be Pan Am stewardesses. And I think this was a really cool way. I didn't know about Pan Am. My most experience with Pan Am is watching Hook. Yeah. I didn't know about the cult of Pan Am. I mean, it was such a phenomenon. Yeah. Like even just seeing pilots held in that kind of regard where they're autographing kids want to be pilots and everything. You don't see that nowadays. Yeah, so it's kind of a cool peek into that culture. But all these women, all these sorority girls and co-eds all wanted to be Pan Am girls. So he gets like a dozen of them. And the way he gets to leave the country is he has all the stewardesses smiling at everybody. That's what he taught him to do. Like have that air about you, and all the cops are distracted. He just walks right through the airport past everyone. And it's the line that's at the thesis of everything is what his dad taught him. Like, why do the Yankees win the pennant? Because everyone's distracted by the pinstripes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's every step of the way. Yeah. That's exactly what he has. And it's about being a con man and having that confidence. Right. And that scene that you're talking about. What's cool
is the structure of these moments is actually kind of set up that way too, where they'll distract you with all the cool, weird, like interesting things he's doing, and then by the time you realize what he's actually doing, it's already taken place basically as the audience. So it's kind of cool how it's structurally set up, and that's total Spielberg right there, Spielberg move.
Yeah, the movie does well with first of all the era, right? It being 1963, that's just like a very fun era to watch people.
For sure,
going around in, and that's like my era. I would like to go back to that. I mean, if you think about it, when he was in New York, he could have walked by like a Llewellyn Davis, right? Like that was like the same time, right? From the Coen Brothers movie, and so that's like early Bob Dylan era. Like there's a lot going on then. Yeah. So it was like a pretty fun time, which they do with this movie. They make it very fun, and they don't do any of those cheap like movie sequences that's like a flashback montage to explain how he did something. Yeah. Like they could have shown him like preparing mentally for the day that he gets caught and what kind of ruse he was going to say when he comes out of the bathroom. Like you just assume that he did that in his spare time. He comes out of the bathroom and he's got the whole bit down.
He knows to be on. Yeah. A worse movie would have had like when he's walking into the bank, a sequence with a Leo voiceover that shows his eyes like dart somewhere and be like, bank manager's in the office over there. Right. How do I pick the teller? I want someone who's young. No, they just show him doing those things and they just assume the audience will pick up on it. And I wish more movies did that.
Yeah.
Other writers just don't have the confidence to make the scenes work that way. But Spielberg he's a pretty magical director for 40 years now. So, every time... this movie never over-explains anything. And there's only one area, and Max and I talked about this a little bit right after watching it, where it gets a little confusing, and that's a little bit about the timing, because when they start the movie, it's him getting arrested in Europe, or getting at least extradited in Europe. And the one thing they don't really go over is how much time passed with him in Europe, because he was in the European jail for a couple years. Yeah. I think 3 or 4 years. And he started all this at 16. And then they mentioned that he
right after the jail scene there at the beginning, it says 6 years prior.
Right.
Yeah. And then jumps into that. And it feels, because he does so much as a teenager, that it naturally, and there's a couple montages in there too, to show that he's doing things, but not, like you said, not in an explaining way, just showing him actually doing them live and then cutting to the results. But, so all of that adds up in this weird way where it feels like more than a year and a half has passed for the majority of the story, but it's really only been a year and a half from when he runs away, basically. Yeah. At most 2 years until it starts kind of hopping further.
He mentions it, doesn't it? He mentions it to Brenda. He says
he says I'm 17 and a half or something like that. Yeah.
When he's running away and opening the briefcases and all the money's flying out.
Yeah, so that gives you the time there.
Yeah, but it is a little hard to follow because they do use that him being brought back to the United States as kind of the anchoring story, and then they kind of go back to what was happening.
In my head, by the time he was a doctor who became a lawyer, I assumed he was 20.
Yeah.
So when they jumped back and were like, oh, I'm actually this many years old, I was just like, oh, wow, I missed something here. So that's my only real complaint with the film is the timing isn't well explained enough to naturally kind of flow with it. And by the end of it, it doesn't really matter because they jump really ahead a lot in the end where he's, I don't know if he's 30 or 40 by the end, but he's aged a lot by the end.
Yeah, when he gets brought back from here, he's 22.
Yeah.
Because they even mentioned that he appealed to be tried as a minor because most of the stuff he did was as a minor, and they were like, no, you're not a minor, and you did a lot of bad stuff.
And then we know Tom Hanks mentions he fought to get him out of prison for a certain amount of time once he's in the U.S., so...
Right.
Obviously, by then, they're more clear on the time, but just in the middle there, it confused me.
Yeah. I had a little plot hole that I caught this time that I never caught before was so he's in Europe, he's hiding, he goes to jail. I think he's in jail in Europe for 4 years.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 years.
He escapes the plane when they bring him back and immediately runs to the house that his mom's living in with Brolin, and it's how did he know that that's where she lived? You know, he hasn't seen her in 5-6 years. He's been in jail.
He Googled it.
The only thing I can
Googled it, 1968.
That I can think of though is since Jack Barnes was a family friend, maybe he knew.
Oh, he knew where Jack Barnes lived.
Yeah, because I imagined that she moved in with him, and there was a couple young kids, but it's not like he could just look it up. You know,
right.
What's your location on Snapchat,
Right, but then and then all the police pull up too, we know where he's going. Jack Barnes' house. That's the guy who's stooping his mom.
It's just it's a movie moment, basically.
Right. It is.
And it does interject movie moments when it uses Christmas as a good passage of time thing, because there's always a scene on a Christmas, whether it's Leo calling Tom Hanks because he's lonely, or he meets his dad on Christmas in a bar once. And if you mentioned he didn't actually ever see his father again after he ran away.
Right.
It's adding a lot of those moments to make the story a little more relatable, maybe.
Right. I tried to find as much as I could because I read the book before the movie came out.
Was the book written by Frank Abagnale?
Yeah, it was one of those co-written things, and kind of one of the things that I found out was that the person who co-wrote it with him, he really only interviewed Frank for 4 hours and then just went ahead and wrote the book. So not everything in the book is true, and the movie's based on the book. And the movie's just fun. Did you catch Frank Abagnale in the movie?
I didn't catch it, but I remember reading that he had a cameo, but I don't remember what it was.
He's the arresting officer in France. When Hanks lures him out, he's the chief of police in France. Yeah. But so he never saw his father again, and where was I going? Sorry.
We were just talking about the differences between the movie and the real life, and
it'd be interesting if the co-writer just plagiarized this whole thing from Frank.
Right.
Well, that's one of my favorite, like, kind of small things to think about is this is a con man. This is based on a novel that he at least dictated. So that could also be a con. Like, there's layers of unreliable narrators here, and then they're embellishing it for a movie. This could have been so much smaller. He could have, like, tried to cash a phony check, and that was it. But he's such a storyteller.
What's your guys' like fraud moment that you want to talk about? Come on, everyone has to have a thing that you pulled off. Like, what's your?
There's only one T in my first name. It's Scott.
I was gonna say it's Stott,
but I just tell people it's Scott with 2 T's. But there's really only one. It's on my true? ID. Mm-hmm. I
have no idea if you're faking me now. Maybe this is the fraud moment.
I'm Scott Tennant. No, that's not true.
I got a lot of free hours at AOL. I'll say that. Back in the day, all those CDs. Somehow I would just fake names and like bank info on it, and they never checked it, I guess.
Really?
It was weird. I found some loophole where I could fake all the AOL stuff.
You're a real Abagnale.
Yeah, so that was mine.
Yeah.
Got free internet for a long time.
I have a scheme idea that I don't want to put on the podcast because I might execute somebody. I know you know it, Max, and you're not someone I'll tell you.
Is it the Spotify one?
Excuse you.
You've talked about it on the show, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's keep going.
Anyways.
I don't know if I have a fraud moment, but I had a fun story that I recalled when I was back home recently where my parents were divorced and I was living with my dad for the summer. I was like 13 years old. And he tries to give me like that tough talk where he's like, okay, well, you can come and go as you please. I'll give you $5 every day because it's like 1993. I'll give you $5 every day for an Arizona iced tea or whatever you want to spend it on. And you can do whatever you want. But the first time you get brought home by the police, it's all over. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go walk into my friend's house. And I was just like, that's so dumb. Like brought home by the police, And I go to my friend's house and her dad pulls up for lunch and he's a cop. And I didn't know that. So I told him, I just left something at my dad's house. Can you bring me back there when you're done with lunch? So it was like no more than 30 minutes after I had left my dad's house. And now he's like, he's cleaning up the apartment, whatever he was doing. And outside he hears that like, boop, boop. And like, there's me in the back of the squad car and my friend's father standing there. And he's like, is this your son? And my dad was like, what did you do? Like, I just told you. So that's not a fraud moment. I have committed fraud, but that's a good one. That it was just one of those ones I felt like having somebody do something for me that I thought was really funny. And I don't think my dad thought it was funny.
Yeah. But I could see a parent not finding that funny.
Yeah, because the scare of it.
Yeah. But I do remember where I was going is that, so Frank Abagnale has talked a lot about the movie. I'm sure it's the only thing people want to talk to him about. Yeah. And he admits that he never called the FBI on Christmas. He didn't want them to know where he was.
It seems a little Hollywood.
He did get caught in Montrechard, France, which is where his mother was from, which is a definite like, what were you thinking? But that's where
just be one town over,
right?
Yeah, be in Mount, something else.
Michelle
St. Helens,
right? Wow. And then one story that I liked that doesn't get covered in the movie because it would have been like too involved was how he broke out of prison. So he did escape the plane, like it happens in the movie.
Does he climb through the?
Yeah, he did.
The wheel well,
and he breaks out of prison. So he was in prison in Atlanta, and he was there for like 3 years, and he had a girlfriend on the outside, and she had found
Brenda Strong.
So this was during like the civil rights era. So people wanted the jails needed to make sure that the prisons were treating the prisoners fairly. Mm-hmm. So they had a lot of undercover prisoners. Like they weren't really prisoners. So his girlfriend did a bunch of research like at his direction and sent him business cards, slid him business cards when she would meet him. So this had to have been like the early 70s. And he convinced one of the guards that he was actually an undercover prisoner. And that he had to call the FBI and let them know what the conditions were like in this prison. And they let him out of prison. And he got on a bus before. And then, so like he gave the business card and they call. I mean, this guy's in jail for massive fraud, right? And so
you think they would have had like a do not trust this man,
right? Yeah. So he gives them the business card, like, here, call my boss. And his girlfriend answers the phone at whatever like payphone it leads to. And they just believed it. So they let him out of prison so that way he could go back and report to the FBI. he went from Atlanta up to New York and got a safe deposit box that had like $20,000 in it, and he made it all the way to Canada, where somebody spotted him in a grocery store.
Wow.
So yeah,
you got to admire the hustle.
That's a crazy one.
Yeah. All of his hustles make me realize how like harmless mine are throughout my entire life. Like one time I got a referral, and the teacher was like, "Go to the office and talk to the principal." And he was like, my teacher was 74 at the time, so he gave me all 3 sheets. So then I just walked around school for 90 minutes with all 3 sheets and then threw it out at the end of the day. That's like the most terrible thing I've done that I could talk about probably. So
that's actually been eating at Max for years.
For years.
It's good to have it off.
After that, it's just like a bunch of file sharing.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so do you feel like the crimes that he commits? The thing with like white collar crime like this is it's like a victimless crime.
They always
right?
say that, yeah, to a degree.
And when he pretended to be a doctor, he stopped doing that because he realized somebody could actually get hurt.
Yeah, that's a victim-full crime.
Right, pretending to be a doctor, that's bad. Don't do that.
Max just quoted the "I concur" line, but that scene's amazing because his entire doctoral training is him watching medical movies.
Yeah.
And so when an actual emergency happens, he just walks up. He's like, "And what do you think?" And they're like, "I think we should do this." And he's like, "I concur." And they're like, "What do you think?" He's like, "I concur." Like that's it. And it's very funny. Do you concur? Yeah. Do you concur?
Right.
And then when he walks away, the 2 doctors are like, "I should have just concurred."
Yeah, that's like I should have. We said that after watching all 3 of those, I've seen Scott be all 3 of those people. I've seen him be the guy making it up, the guy who's second guessing his choices, and the guy who was annoyed with everyone else. Yeah. So
often at the same time.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It actually I've been listening to a podcast called Dr. Death.
I've heard of this one.
It's an insane story about a surgeon who he didn't con his way into doing surgeries, but he was essentially a psychopath doing surgeries. And all of the 35 people he did surgery on, only 3 of them ended up not dying or being handicapped afterward. Like he was doing neurosurgery and just like shredding people and leaving sponges in people's bodies. He medically
decapitated someone.
Essentially, Like he took someone who was completely healthy and cut like a lot of his throat and like neck muscles and stuff, and insane stuff. But that is the harmful side of what Frank Abagnale did. Like this guy who the story with the Dr. Death thing, and I'm not going to linger on this, is just that essentially this guy he was narcissistic and he just believed that he could do it. And he never really went through the proper training. And then the hospitals didn't want to report what had happened because it makes them look bad, opens them to lawsuits, and it became this whole thing.
And Abagnale, on the other hand, is just trying to hide. He's just trying to have a cover. And
he has no intention of hurting anyone.
No intention of hurting. So as soon as he realized he could hurt somebody,
does he ever talk about like what really drove him to do this besides parents divorcing and having to think of life that way?
Getting away with things.
Yeah.
Just
so
being
it's like
able
the thrill of the game.
Yeah, just knowing that you can get away with it. That's what the movie made it
seem like.
Especially the first con he does is pretending to be a substitute teacher for a week. The French teacher.
Oh, that's great.
He's wearing the suit and tie at school, and the bully like hits him, and then he walks into class and they say there's going to be a sub. So he just walks up and picks up the chalk and starts.
And it happens to be a French class, and he can speak French, right?
And so then the bully's like, oh man, because he had like literally like pile drive this guy in the hallway. Yep. And then the next scene is just his parents in the principal's office, and the principal's like, like he's been pretending to be a sub for a week. He was planning a field trip to a French bread factory or something. But then it shows like right afterward when his dad's like looking at him as they're walking away, they just smile and laugh. So it's like, it is kind of the fun thrill of it, I think. Yeah. But I mean, that's the movie again, not his actual experience.
Yeah.
But
it's a weird bit that like he just wants to get away with things, and he also knows how.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like where it's almost like, did this not occur until he was 15 or 16? Like, was that his mutant power? Because like he's sitting there while his parents are talking to the principal, and he's not nervous. He thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
And a student has a note, and he tells her like, "Where's the fold? You got to fold it, you know, because that's what you do when your mom gives you a note. You fold it and you put it in your pocket." And it's like all of a sudden he's just coming out with all of these different ways to get away with things, and he just realizes he can, and people are going to believe him, people are going to listen to him.
I wonder, in the movie it felt like, and I don't know if this is real life, but in the movie it felt like seeing his father's struggles with authority led him to just at that point when he was a teenager be like, I am done with authority.
He probably justified his actions a bit. He's like, well,
because the government got one over on them, so he can get one over on everybody.
They're kicking my dad when he's down, so I can pull a fast one on them with these checks.
And they very much had it written into his character at first, where he's like, I'm going to get the money back, I'm going to get the house back, and that was just like, I don't think he necessarily believed it by the time he finally met up with his dad and was saying it, because he was saying it at first, but then it was just kind of empty words after a while, because you're not getting it back, she's married again, so
but you got to say it to like remember
to
why
justify
you're doing
it
these
also
things, but I don't know, it's such a fascinating movie. I'm going to try and read the book. I haven't read a book in a while, and I'm not like that kind of guy who's like, I don't read and like proud of it. I just don't make time for it. But this would be a really cool read, I think.
Yeah.
Especially since I enjoy the movie so much.
And again, you got to understand that it may not be completely accurate to what actually happened, but...
Yeah. But still, I mean, it's an interesting character study.
Does it go in the fiction or the nonfiction section?
It is in the true crime section.
You know what? It's in the bestsellers.
The action section.
Yeah. I do think this is an action movie. I mean, it's not in the Rambo sense that it's an action movie, but the movie has a constant momentum. Like Baby Driver is the last movie I saw that stays moving at like a really manageable pace that it's never going too fast, it's never going too slow. And this movie is the same way, in my opinion, at least until that like last 10 minutes, 15 minutes of wrapping up the story. But he moves from con to con, from hustle to hustle, so with so much momentum that you're never dry. Like it's never like, oh, he's settled down as a pilot. Even when he was settled down as a lawyer, it never stops. Like it still moves. So I see it as an action movie in the sense that there's always action going on. But there's never like a bullet fired.
I'm just teasing you.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying because it is a weird thing to think about. But
for me, I mean, it falls more towards kind of like the true crime thing you mentioned, but it's more like a cat and mouse game. Like definitely a criminal pursuit. So I could see where it borderlines action for sure. But
did you not consider Tom and Jerry an action cartoon?
No.
Oh.
Well, actually, they were very violent. So yeah.
Boom. Wait, what? We agree and disagree. But
this movie did have some 2002 things that I liked, which was opening credits.
Oh yeah, it had a really fun opening credits.
Opening credits with like, different, like it was like cartoony style.
like running around
like an opening
screen.
Theme song and opening credits. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like
that feels almost like a 1960s thing.
And I do remember all the comic book movies from like 2000 through maybe 2004 had extensive, super long
like
opening
credits sequence. I remember.
Yeah. The Spider-Man films. By the third one, it itself was its own film. The opening sequence, and it does feel very kind of older because you expect it in a James Bond film.
Yeah,
I think
they're famous for that now. But
maybe one thing,
and James Bond was part of the movie. It's James Bond. He goes buys the car. Yeah. That's when he sleeps with Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
I think one thing that was something I was curious about, and I don't recall thinking it at the time, but this movie comes out in late 2002.
December 27th.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's about a guy who's sneaking onto airplanes illegally. Mm-hmm. And, and
it's kind of playfully done.
Yeah, it's playfully done. Yeah. And I think that, like, it was maybe they had to make sure that it was funny and remind people that this was a long time ago before you could get away with this kind of stuff. Yeah. Because, you had the TSA getting ramped up at that time. They had to do it in, like, a funny, kind of campy way. And maybe opening the movie with, like, a 1960s style opening credits kind of, like, put everybody's mind at ease, and it made it funny. Like you couldn't make it a heist movie where somebody's trying to do something dangerous.
Yeah, like a gritty version of this movie.
Especially when it has to do with airplanes and getting on airplanes when you're in 2002 when you're not supposed to be on airplanes.
And maybe it helps that the first scene of the movie is the game show.
Right.
Where
it's true.
Him and two not hims come out and answer questions. And what, to tell the truth, was that the name of the game show?
I think so.
Something like that. But that kind of sets the tone too, that there's like a playful nature to it all.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting. And I wonder if, and I'm sure Pan Am was what he actually used, but the fact that Pan Am is famously not an airline anymore can also remove you from the modernness. If he was doing all this and wearing a Delta uniform, that might have been darker than using Pan Am, which is kind of I don't know, it's like a fun history lesson at this point.
Yeah, so he did pretend to be a Pan Am pilot, but always flew on other airlines because he was nervous that they would realize he wasn't one of theirs.
Yeah. It's funny.
This movie did well at the box office. I want to see, can either of you guys guess what the budget was?
In 2002.
In 2002.
60 million? That'd be a lot, because Titanic at the time was like 96 or 97, and that was 100. So
I'd go like 30 million.
I'll bring it down to 55.
Albert's pretty spot on. It's $52 million.
Nice. Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
My next was $1 because I didn't want to go over.
Gotcha, Pat. A movie like this made today would probably have $135 million budget, but and it made 164 million domestic and like 300 million worldwide. So it was a big hit. And I remember when I was in like 8th grade when this movie came out, and people were talking about it a lot. I never saw it until like 3 or 4 years ago, but and I don't know why now.
Really?
Like, yeah, because it's not like a movie my parents.
I'll tell you
were
why I didn't see it at the time, because I was probably still watching Spider-Man, and especially if it was still in theaters by any chance, if they brought it back or anything. Well, because that one came out in May. I looked it up.
That was a summer blockbuster, I remember. But when this came out, you might have seen The Two Towers that weekend instead.
I definitely
because this was number 2 behind the second week of Two Towers.
I did see it in the theater, so I was 22 at the time, so I saw this movie in the theater, and I do remember the first joke I made to the person that was sitting next to me watching the movie. So we had definitely seen a lot of Pulp Fiction. So when Christopher Walken hands the checkbook to Leonardo DiCaprio, I said, "I hid this checkbook up my ass."
That's fine.
And the person next to me was like, "No, don't." So because I was ruining the movie by making
this, though.
Yeah.
The reason they were saying no wasn't because of your Christopher Walken impression. I actually thought that was very good. That little taste you just gave us.
Thank you. So and whenever I see it, that's what I recall, is making that joke in the theater.
Mm-hmm. How'd you guys like that spilled wine moment?
Oh, yeah.
Is that foreshadowing?
You're gonna have to. They
spill the wine and they're dancing, but they're stomping on it, and he's staring at it. It was just like a very noticeable moment, I thought.
And when his parents are dancing.
Oh, just that like their relationship's doomed. It's just like a little like image symbolism kind of thing. I don't know.
They were living in the nice house at the time, right? So
she was very concerned about the rug too.
Yeah, she was concerned about the rug, and the father was like, "Who gives a damn?" You know. So,
but it also shows how she cared about appearances and he doesn't. So there's a lot of. It was just an interesting moment. It's very. They draw a lot of attention to it, like a lot of close-ups and them all staring and the dancing, and it's just unique. So
for sure. I love the way that the movie has little details that are never too on the nose. Like we talked about, the stationery store is one of my favorite ones now. But
things on the margins there.
Yeah, and when the first time they go to get for Frank Sr. to try and get the bank loan, so they have to get the black suit so that Leo or Frank Jr. can pretend to be the driver and all that. When Frank Sr. wakes him up, there's a bunch of Flash comics on his nightstand, and then he always uses Barry Allen as his code name. And
does that put this movie in the DCU or no?
This is part of the DCU.
Yeah, because of the Barry Allen thing. That's good.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know enough about DC. I was going to say Nick Fury, and then I realized I was wrong, and then.
Yeah. This movie, it's very rewatchable. It's got a high rewatchability factor because it doesn't do the, here's a montage of things that he did and why you need to remember this. Like, it just lets it all, it's a chase movie. It just keeps going.
Yeah, and you'll miss little things and then pick up on them a second watch. Mm-hmm. So it's a good movie. So Break Clowns, if you haven't watched it, do it now, especially since we're liking it so much.
Not streaming anywhere though, right?
No, not for free.
Well, you have to we rent it on
Amazon. But.
Yeah,
I have it on DVD in my garage, and it was buried under so many. Like my DVD crate is buried under so many boxes that I just decided to pay $4 to get it.
He sent me a picture of it, and he was like, "The very bottom crate is where my DVD for this movie is. Should I just rent it?" And so I said, "Does that look like more than $4 worth of work?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "You're right, I'm renting it."
Yeah. Yep. Someday it'll get watched, though.
So, oh, yeah.
I was actually shocked I didn't own this one on Blu-ray. I was very upset with myself because I collect Blu-rays and I didn't have a movie I love so dearly. Albert, thank you for joining us.
No problem. It was fun. We could do this more often than every 6 months or so.
I think every 6 months is fine.
Every 6 months. Okay. I'm looking forward to being on This American Fife.
Wow. A little presumptuous.
That's a vote.
A little presumptuous.
That's a vote. That's recorded.
Well, he hasn't even heard next week's.
Oh, what a tease. Well, where can the good people find us next week?
You can find us here on the podcast, as well as on Facebook, or on Instagram, or on Twitter. Or have I said our website? thecriticalbreakdown.com.
Said it now.
Thanks.
I said it earlier.
You can find me always subbing for Roberta, or on Twitter at AW Dubreuil, spelled just like it sounds.
That's a good one.
Good luck, everyone. Max, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me trying to convince Amy Adams to meet me at an airport, or you can find me on Twitter at Max Rivera Film.
You can find me trying to find the jump seat on the plane, or you can find me on Instagram at breakdown_Scott, or on Letterboxd at Stenin2. Really wish I could change that. But I've done a lot of logging on that account. I'm not going to make a new one. Almost 800 films logged on there.
That might be my pitch next week.
A name change.
We contact them and work through it, and we just record the whole process.
It's called the name change.
Yeah.
Our music is done by Jason Brown.
And our artwork is done by Josh Rivera.
And Wally's the podcast con man.
And we're out of here.
Beautiful.